This is Alex Levin, and I'm here with Marc Bernstein, the founder and CEO of Balto. Thank you for joining us, Marc.
Alex, great to be here.
So to start, maybe tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you end up being a founder? Was it a traditional path, or did you go off and do lots of different things?
You know, I didn't grow up thinking I'm definitely going to be a founder. It wasn't like I had that North Star my entire life, but I found myself always wanting to build stuff and build organizations. I started trading stocks when I was in middle school, and then I started a stock trading club in high school. And then I had got really into physical fitness, so I became a personal trainer in my senior year of high school, and I started kind of a little personal training business. So, kind of like a nice lifestyle business. And that's where I really learned the fundamentals of starting a business, going out and getting customers, making sure you're taking good care of customers, thinking about your product, which in that case is, the style of training and the results you deliver, and then hiring and expanding the business and making sure managing the numbers. And I grew that lifestyle business to over 100 clients and a base of 5 trainers. But I noticed that it was almost a little tapped out for potential. It's very difficult to retain trainers. It's a career move a lot of people kind of go into and then they bounce out of, and then they go back in and they bounce out. So I found myself constantly on this hiring treadmill and thought, if I want to do a business at a bigger scale, I probably should look at an industry like tech. So went to learn, and get into the tech space. And, here we are now, 7 years later with starting Balto, which is the leading AI company in our space.
So did you work for other people first in tech, or how did you learn about tech, in your words?
Just a little bit. Right after college, I joined another startup here in St. Louis called Top Ops. And it was one of those experiences where you are working with a founder who really knows their stuff. It was Jim Eberlin, who had previously started Gainsight, unicorn out in the valley, and also even before that, a company called Host Analytics, which ended up becoming Planful. And so this was Jim's third run at starting a tech company. And I was like, this guy probably has a formula. Let me see if I can learn as much from him and the organization, the team as possible. So I was at Top Ops for a year and a half in a sales role. And that's actually where I met one of the other founders, Chris Contes, who pushed me to start this with him. I was originally saying, no, I'm happy. I love sales. I love the startup. And, Chris said, Mark, we have to dream big. We have to go do it. You have a good idea. Let's do it. So Top Ops is where I both learned about startups and also got that push to go do the next thing.
When you think back to those days, what were the best lessons you learned working for other people?
I think it's so funny because I keep reprocessing my experience that I had at Top Ops again and again. And as when I remember it, I kind of learn new things thinking back on it. So an example is I remember at the time, there would be some decisions like around personnel or around processes or promotions that I was a brand new, fresh out of college kid. And, I said, I don't understand it. It's crazy. Why are they doing it this way or that way? And now, at this point, 9 years later, I'm like, oh, I kind of get why they made the decisions that they made. So there's almost like this humility that you get. It's a little of like hindsight 2020, but it's almost like humility 2020. When you go back, you're like, oh, I really didn't know as much as I thought. And that
Yeah, I
tends
was
to
pushing
be
them to
the
do it my
pattern.
way, but maybe they were right after all.
Totally, 100%. And it's like I just didn't have the perspective to understand their perspective. I didn't have the experience to be able to like reverse engineer how they got some of the decisions that they got to. So that was
Yeah.
kind of an interesting lesson. And I also think that's where I really started to learn sales, grinding, and systems. And I think that those three things, sales, grinding, and systems, actually fit super well together. Sales, being the craft of having conversations that drive intended outcomes. So you
Mhm.
could say, fundraising is a sale. You could say getting folks excited about joining your company is a sale. You could say getting a customer to flipping a customer from being frustrated to being happy is a sale of sort. But I
Mm.
really learned how to have an effective sales conversation, which is just a purposeful conversation where you're in control, thinking thoughtfully about how to progress it rather than just letting it go wherever it goes. And then,
I
the best
mean,
type of
I know
sales.
you
Yeah, go
you
ahead.
see this too as a founder. You're having to sort of explain your company every day, 5 times a day for the rest of your life. So, to your point, you better enjoy it, whether you call it sales or you call it something else. You better enjoy being in that situation, sort of working with people to help them understand the vision you have.
Yeah, yeah. And if you don't learn from it when you explain it 5 times a day, if you just like click into that mechanical mode and say, "Up, here's my pitch again," then you're missing out. Like I still, every time I explain what my company does, kind of analyze how did the person respond? Did it go well? Did it not go well? Do I like our messaging as it is now? Do I think it's simple enough? Can this resonate with a bunch of different audiences? If I explain this to someone who, I was actually at a holiday concert, my wife was singing at a concert this past weekend, and there's this very nice couple, and they're both in their 80s, and they asked what my company did, and I was able to explain what our AI did, and they got it. And I was like, ooh, that might be the best explanation I've had, that two folks not in tech who are kind of in their 80s were able to pick it up. That was a really cool experience.
No, I like it. So let's go to that. So like who is your typical customer and like what is the pain they're having? What are they turning to you guys to do specifically?
Yep. It tends to be a mid market contact center in financial services, insurance, or high value retail. Those are kind of our best segments. And
Hmm.
the reason is that each of those segments have a good number of representatives on the phone, where they might have, hundreds or thousands of people that are all talking to their customers, for service or retention or new sales or cross sells or, even just solving issues. And if the conversation goes well, then there's a great opportunity. And if the conversation doesn't go well, you might lose a very expensive customer. You might have a compliance issue that you just created. You might get your brand blasted on Twitter. So we look for different types of customers where that fork is very important, where you want your representatives at scale to being having effective conversations with your customers. And we do that with what we call real-time guidance. It analyzes everything that customers say live while they say it, everything the representative says live while the representative says it, and in real time will give that rep recommendations on their computer screen about how they can be as effective as possible. So a customer might call in with a question, or they might call in with a complaint. They might say, "Hey, there's something wrong with my bill," and our software will hear that and pop up different information and different ways, recommendations to the agent on how they can handle that as effectively as possible.
Yeah. And so at this point you guys have, gotten pretty big and sort of served quite a few customers. What do you think is the secret sauce in this conversation intelligence and sort of real time sort of analysis world? Because and the reason I ask is that in B2B, there's a couple like, IPO scale businesses in the space, in Gong and in, Whole Course, I guess wasn't IPO scale, but, Apollo maybe soon, where there's sort of really pretty big businesses. In B2C, in more sort of consumer businesses, there's nobody at that scale yet. So it still feels like, for whatever reason, customers aren't using this technology as much. Like, so why do you think that is? And like, yeah, what are you seeing sort of that's maturing in this industry?
I think it actually represents a bigger industry shift that's happening right now. And I think that folks in the B2B space like Gong were very smart to capitalize on it early. The shift is that in order to get insights from your conversations, call it 10 years ago, in order to do that, you had to have a technical team run the recordings through a transcription engine and a technical team then label the transcription in order to pull out various events of, try to just make sense of what happened. And then you would have a data science team mine the different events for insights. They basically would download a giant CSV and look for relationships across all the different events. When a customer has this complaint and the call lasts 4 minutes, then the chance that they end up happy is 12% less.
Mhm.
So that used to be a very sophisticated series of processes that needed to get run in order to actually pull out an insight. And what conversation intelligence did, and folks like Gong did a great job of capitalizing on in the B2B space, is they made it easy. They said, you don't need a technical team. You don't need a data science team. You can be just a normal person. You can just be a normal person, and you go on into your conversation analytics and you can see insights about what's going well in your conversations and what's not. I think that the speech analytics really started in the B2C space. Like speech analytics has actually been around since I think the early 2000s. So I think that it's just players in our space are taking more time to catch up. They have technical debt and they have almost momentum debt or culture debt to overcome, to be thinking, how do we cater toward a new type of user? Someone who doesn't have necessarily the same data savvy, but has hypotheses they want to test and things they want to figure out and answers they want to get. So it's a different type of user. And Gong was almost able to start with a fresh slate. And in the contact center world, folks had to reimagine how they were implementing this technology.
Yeah, so to your point, there was a longer history, and so a little bit more of a mess on the ground that they had to clean up before you could start getting people in sort of more of these. But yeah, I mean, it's in this world. There's a lot of different use cases people talk about. So they talk about sort of a QA use case, a coaching use case, an insights use case, a automated next actions use case. What do you think is the killer use case that people, or what should people be thinking about first if they're not doing any of it?
Well, I'll tell you what I hear all the time. The highest level is people say, I want insights, meaning I want to learn something about my business that I didn't previously know. And then people usually use the word actionable insights. I want it to be something that I can look at and go, oh, geez, I can go deploy this to my customer service floor, my sales floor, and make a difference. So then the question is, what kind of insights are there? And you can kind of break it down between agent insights and customer insights, because those are essentially the two parties on the line. Customer insights, voice of the customer, what are they saying? And what are the issues that they have? What do they like? What do they not like? Why are they calling in? That is still actually the number one most queried question from a speech analytics tool is, why are my customers calling? People are still trying to figure that out. Um, and then on the agent side, what are the agents doing well? What are they not doing well? What tactics appear to be successful? What tactics appear to be problems? What compliance mistakes may they have made? So those are kind of the different categories of insights you can pull out of it. And I think that the key is that when an organization learns something from speech analytics, and that needs to be step one, you have to learn something. You then have to be able to apply it back to your contact center force at scale. If you learn something and can't do anything with it, then what's the point? So our premise actually all along has been at Balto that organizations have what we call an insight backlog. They actually have a lot of things they've learned. And by the way, you don't just have to learn things through speech analytics. You can learn through books, through blog posts, through best practices, just the stuff that you say, yeah, this is what I think leads to, having a really good business, running a good business. How do you take the things you learn and then actually scale them out so it's being reflected in your sales conversations and your customer conversations? So that's something that Balto has really uniquely done, is connect those two pieces, the insight, where, we help you look in your calls and pick out, what is leading to successful outcomes and what's not. And then the real-time guidance, allowing you to wish the push of a button, scale out whatever the best answer is, the right knowledge, the right tactic. We allow you to scale that out to all of your agents with the push of a button. So you're not just learning stuff, but you're applying it.
Yeah, makes sense. And do you think I guess when you go talk with clients today, do you think this is more useful in sort of revenue generating sales use cases, or do you see more pull in customer service use cases, or is it kind of even between them?
Different uses, and it's changed over time. In the beginning, it was absolutely more useful for sales. And the reason is the ROI is so easy. With sales, if you can have an agent ask two or three more discovery questions on a call
Hmm.
and attempt to overcome an objection where previously they might have just said, okay, thank you, or make an attempt to close the deal and get the sale, whereas maybe they just would have, given up. Well, those are huge levers, and you actually just win dollars in the bank, and it's very easy to pay back the software. The customer service world, up until right around after COVID, so call it, after the start of COVID, call it, mid 2021, right around up until then, customer service teams, they put as their North Star customer experience at all costs. And that's great that they were trying to really provide great experiences for the customer. But the idea of trying to make your contact center more efficient and reduce the amount of time that it takes to handle a customer interaction was a little bit taboo. It was, we don't want to speed up the customer interactions because if we do that, we're going to be rushing them off the phones. But it turns out that now there are a whole bunch of tools, like real-time guidance, like real-time note-taking, that allow you to just pop the right answer up to the agent the second that they need it, that allow you to automatically take notes for the agent so you can save them time. They don't need to take notes after the call. So those time savings of 30 seconds here, 30 seconds there really add up. And organizations have shifted saying, you know what? We've realized that what do customers want most? The thing they want most is not a happy branded greeting, hello, thank you so much for calling. It's my pleasure to serve you today. Like, that's not the thing customers want the most, nor is it this trained empathy where anytime you say something bad, they say, I understand, Alex, that really sounds difficult. Like, that's not the thing that they want the most. What they want the most is for you to answer their questions correctly and quickly. That's what they want the most. So I think organizations have shifted their view to that. So now customer service organizations are adopting this real-time technology at an increasing rate. And I think it's about to be almost a 50-50 split in terms of where the biggest ROI is.
And we talked about it sort of earlier. We have a couple customers in common. We focus mostly on outbound and sales teams. So in our case, it's sort of sales organizations. So without going into the specific customers, we see that they they often, when they are thinking about where to do work, they often start thinking with, how do I get more people on the phone, right? How do I connect with my customer? And that's sort of task one. Once they feel like they've maximized that, they shift into, what do I do to maximize the on-call conversion and sort of lifetime value of the customer, to your point. And in that world, often they start with some manual things, so manual QA, and then they shift as they mature into these sort of more technology enabled solutions. So part of this is also sort of, getting companies up that maturity curve, because if they're not even feeling good about their answer rate, or they're not even feeling good about the people on their team, they're not even ready to go have every interaction interpreted for them. It feels like, at least to us, it feels like. So do you think that's fair? Do you think there's still sort of a lot of maturing that needs to happen in this organization, or do you think even sort of very early teams should be using this technology as well?
Yeah. Well, I think first the fact is that fewer than 15% of sales organizations today are using some form of real-time guidance for their agents. So, 85% are either saying, we're not ready for it, or it's not ready for us. So I think that's the first fact. I think that it absolutely can be useful for less mature organizations. But the thing is, less mature organizations often don't know what to scale. So that's kind of a big part of the power of the technology, is it's almost like a machine gun or something, where, it you put a tactic in, and then you're able to spread that around at a like rapid rate. Terrible analogy, but you get the point I'm making. I think that that's like the power of the technology, is that it takes behaviors that you've identified that are going to make a big difference for your customers and ultimately for your bottom line, and allow you to amplify those technologies and make them those behaviors and make them happen more often. And I think sometimes early organizations are still just at the early stages trying to figure out, how do I get my phone to work? How do I have a basically effective customer conversation? So they're just trying to get the basics figured out. So I guess my
And
ultimate
what's
recommendation,
that sign? Like
yeah,
either when you're prospecting for customers, like what do you look for to know that they're mature enough? Or like if a customer's thinking about it themselves and trying to decide on their 2024 priorities, like what's the sign that they're ready to start really investing in this kind of tech?
there's no one sign. And it's funny, Alex, our sales process has over 60 milestones. And the milestone is some sort of action that the buyer takes to indicate, yes, this is moving in the right direction. We should continue to pursue the process together. And every sale has ultimately all or almost all, sometimes you'll skip a couple, but almost all of those milestones complete. And that's even things like, do you know your paper process? Like, do you know how your organization signs a contract, and who the signer of the contract would be, and where the budget comes from? And do you have a cloud based telephony system, or are you still on like a legacy hard phone system? Those are all the sort of questions that indicate whether somebody is ready or not. I think that, my recommendation to folks would be, you don't know if you're ready. We don't know if you're ready until we talk. And I think that when you talk and you kind of see the solution and we start to map out different ways you could use it, you'll either say, "Oh yeah, like this is our next thing," or you'll say, "Oh, this is like 3 steps later." But, the more that you have that dialogue, the more you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we've seen very happy customers with Balto and sort of recommend it, particularly when, so Regal already does sort of post call transcription and, there's ability for people to look at sort of that. But when customers are starting to push beyond that and they say in real time, I need to be able to make sure, one, my agents are saying what I want them to say. Two, I want to understand in real time how to suggest different things, than what they're saying. For instance, that's when really it goes beyond, in my mind, the sort of what's the vanilla conversation intelligence that's become very available into something that's really quite differentiated and something that Balto does very well. Very few companies are able to do this in real time today.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. When we invented it back in 2017, it was a major leap. And, very fortunately, we invested in that not technology almost exclusively for the first 5 years of the company. And, now the company is 7 years old, and we're looking at the next era of the technology. What are folks able to do with generative AI? It's very real. And over the past year, I think this past year, we have had the most progress on our product roadmap and tangible progress that customers can feel than we've ever had before in history. And I think part of the reason is that before these Gen AI models came out, if we wanted to create a model to detect if a customer is upset, that would be us gathering up 500 hours of call recordings, labeling the recordings with a contractor force in South America, running a model, testing the model, selecting the best model, then rerunning it in production to see if it performs like accurately in a real environment, then productionizing it and getting it out like to our customers. So that would be a 6-month process. Now it's one query, one set of prompts to any of these, awesome third-party LLMs, or even some of the open source or our own LLMs. It's like one prompt. So the ability to be able to create a lot of product quickly, it's an unprecedented opportunity. It's never happened before in history.
So we have a couple minutes left. Like looking forward, what do you think is going to happen in this industry? Like what should customers be thinking about over the next couple of years?
Well, I think that the biggest thing we're going to see is that over the next 3 years, AI is going to get so sophisticated that it is as intelligent or more intelligent than a average person. And that essentially means, and folks will call that AGI. And there's different definitions of it, but AGI, artificial general intelligence. I think we're going to see that within 3 years. And what that means is that, now we have a relatively fixed workforce at any time. People are always coming into the
Mhm.
workforce and out of the workforce, but it's roughly 140 or 150 million in the United States. And if we want to increase the workforce, we now need to tell people who aren't working, hey, we really need to start working. We need to get immigration and add more people to the population, or people need to be born and mature into the workforce. That's how you create, how you have more working capacity. But now we're essentially going to be able to create, when we get to AGI, unlimited numbers of workers at like a fraction of the cost of what a human needs. So it's going to be a massive, massive disruption to like the labor market, to the like our economy, our like societal norms. And there's going to be a lot of change that's going to be happening over the next, call it 5 to 10 years. So I think that the thing that I would predict here is not only will we have AGI within 3 years, but that people are going to need to really make an effort to keep up with the technology as much as possible, because it will get harder to keep up with the technology, because now the technology will get better faster than we can learn it. And we're almost at that pace where new technologies are coming out every single day. And if you wanted to, get your hands on it, by the time you get your hands on it, the next version's out. I think we're going to see more and more of that. And the people who are able to really invest in understanding it and using it, and use it in a useful way, I think are the folks who are going to be able to build really big businesses and lead amazing companies.
Yeah. So you were saying AGI in 3 years. Do you think it's indistinguishable from a human at that point, or even sooner? Is it in this like if I'm having a conversation with what I think is a human online on the phone, forget text. Like, at what point will that be? Will it be that AI is indistinguishable from a human?
Yeah, within 3 years. I think that if you look at what causes it to be distinguishable and indistinguishable, there's vocal traits and then there's reasoning traits. So a vocal trait might be the amount of time it takes to respond to you, not having an excessive lag. A vocal trait might be the natural intonation that we use, or the little stutters, or the likes and ums and the filler words. It might be just simply the volume you speak and modulating your volume in a very normal way. We're getting very, very close to being able to make the vocal aspects of AI nearly indistinguishable from a human, which really means the last bit is the reasoning capabilities, which
Mhm.
is if you tell a joke and the joke is sarcasm and it's very dry, will an AI be able to get it? Well, first of all, people don't always get it. Think about the number of times where someone tells a dry joke and then someone goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. Were you kidding or are you serious?"
Yeah, was that a joke or was that real?
Happens all the time.
Yeah.
So, how do we get an AI to be as good at that reasoning, as good at the context? That will take a little bit. But I do think within 3 years, if you're having a standard conversation, it will be indistinguishable, but that won't be in the mass market for regulatory issues. And, will the AI have to disclose, hi, my name is Alex, I'm an AI, how may I help you today? And then will customers accept that? Will they be cool with that?
Do you
The
think
AI
do you
makes a
think
mistake.
one
What
of the
happens?
standards will be disclosure? This is AI, not a human.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to. I think actually that'll be a important almost signature throughout our society, and you can see how much people lean toward those forms of disclosure. Remember when the pandemic first hit? There were the vaccine passports, and people really wanted to like be able to distinguish safe from not safe, familiar from not familiar. You know, do you have the vaccination credentials or do you not? I think almost like leaning toward wanting to do that sort of segmentation is like a natural human instinct. And I think
Mm.
we're going to very quickly want to know, are we talking to a person or are we talking to an AI, so we can feel secure that with our own operating models, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
For a long time, my understanding was you could just ask it a simple math question. But if I understand now, there are some models that are starting to be able to answer, some AI models that are starting to be able to answer simple math. So it's harder to tell if it really is a AI or not. But yeah, today, most models you say, what's 3 plus 6, and it won't be able to do it for you.
The recent Gemini release, what the Google researchers put in their paper, that this new multimodal model called Gemini, which basically means that it can multimodal, meaning that it can do a bunch of different types of functions. So it can analyze text, it can analyze voice, it can do computation.
Hmm.
And they show this awesome example of an AI solving a physics problem. It's grading a student's paper, and the student is doing an illustration to show some sled going down a hill, and it's the student is writing out in handwriting their answer, and the AI is picking up the illustration, picking up the handwriting, converting it to some concept, the illustration to what that really means, a sled going down a hill at a certain speed, the handwriting for text, and then running it through its math model and saying, here's where the student made a mistake on their paper. That was released by, the example released by Gemini a week ago. Imagine what this is going to look like in the next 3 years.
Yeah, much better. So should we all like leave our day jobs and go learn how to be AI engineers? Is that the future?
I actually think the future is what some AI researchers will call an era of plentitude, which is that companies will get so good at building stuff efficiently that the costs for everything that we enjoy in society will go down, and that'll actually give people the opportunity to do things that are less of a grind and more fulfilling. So the what I would recommend to people is stay up on technology so you can be a part of this new era of the workforce, and lean into your humanness. Learn math, learn art, learn music, write poetry, go do comedy, go do plays. I think that we're going to see the things that people do that are intrinsically valuable because there's some human aspect that's emotional, that's flawed, that's creative. I think that that is how more and more of us will be spending their times. And I think it'll be a really wonderful world. But that won't happen until we go through quite a bit of disruption first.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. AI is a deflationary force, so by and large, will be very good for people. Every time there's been a massive transition in whether it's a laundry machine or a TV or the internet, like there's been sort of naysayers worried about sort of eliminating lots of jobs, and it may have changed the jobs people do, but net society has become more efficient and created more jobs, not the opposite. So thank you for joining me today, Mark. If somebody wants to reach out to you, where should they go?
They can visit our website at balto.ai, BALTO.ai, or they can connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'm on linkedin.com/in/Balto CEO.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.